Hi everyone and welcome to this Fantasy Art Friday video. In this video I'm working on a drawing of a Gemstone Dragon and I noted this idea down a couple of months ago and I've been extremely excited about trying it. As a lot of you know, I love working on dragon drawings and I'm always looking forward to working on the next one. And in this case, in terms of the design of this dragon, I wanted to imagine that its skin looked like hardened molten rock and I wanted the gemstones to be protruding from that surface. And then I wanted the larger gemstones to be aligned around the back of the dragon's head and form kind of a lion's mane shape. And then thinking about the environment this dragon could live in, I was thinking maybe a cave and it could be protecting something within. So I added a cave system in the background around the comic panel. And as usual with my recent drawings like this, I ended up spending a lot of extra time on the planning and the initial sketch. I love thinking about the design of the dragon and its environment and the way its environment has affected its shape and its design. I find this to be so fun. Once the sketch was completed, I then moved on to adding the pen outlines using a Copic Multiliner SP 0.03mm. And again, this process also took an extra large amount of time because I have been using this finer pen tip and I found this to be extremely fun as well. Spending a bit of extra time on the outlines has definitely helped the end result of my recent drawings. I'm really glad that I've been using this pen and keeping those lines as smooth as possible. Once the outlines were completed, it was time to add the colouring, and for the colouring of this drawing I used Copic Markers, starting off by working on the dragon's face, and I began by using Cool Grey 1, 3, 5 and 7, starting off with the light shades first and then building up towards darker shades with Cool Grey 5 and 7, and then in those areas where I added the darker shading I didn't want to lose the details amongst that, so I used a white Prismacolor pencil to add some outlining to help define the shape. And I also used a pale heath marker to add some warmer highlighted tones towards the left side of the dragon's face. For the dragon's eye, I added some bright colouring with a cerise marker and then used Cool Grey 3 and 5 to add shading, and then made sure to add some bright highlights with a Uni-Ball Signo Broad white ink pen. Next up, it was time to start adding some colour to the gemstones. I used amethyst and cerise towards the centre of each one, and then around the outside I blended some sky blue and Prussian blue. I found the Prussian blue to be really helpful in adding a darkened right side to each gem. And then finally, to add detail to each one, I used the Uni-Ball highlighter pen. Once I'd finished adding the colouring to the dragon's face, I then wanted to add some really bright and vibrant colour to the large gemstones on the back of the dragon's head. And I used the same methods that I did for the smaller gemstones on the dragon's face, but I wanted to blend in some lighter colours towards the top just because these gemstones are much larger. So for each of the large gemstones I started off by working on the centre colours first with the amethyst and the cerise, and then towards the top I blended in a little bit of light pink. Then around the outside of each large gemstone I used sky blue along with ice blue, and then I made sure to add lots of shading with the Prussian blue. And on these large gemstones it was also a great opportunity for me to use the Uni-Ball highlighter pen to focus lots of detail along each ridge of the gemstones. This part of the drawing around the back of the dragon's head ended up taking the most time of the whole drawing, just because I focused lots of attention to each of the gemstones. It was fun to add all of this bright colouring to contrast the grey skin tones, and I enjoyed being a bit more relaxed with the colour placement. When I'd finally completed all of the large gemstones around the back of the dragon's head, it was time to work on the dragon's neck. So I started off by working on the front plates, and I wanted these to have the same look as the skin on the dragon's face, that molten rock effect. So I started with light shading first and then built up the layers of shading as I went, moving on towards the Cool Grey 5 and 7 and making sure to add that darkest shading along the right side of each plate. After that, for the gemstones I used exactly the same method as I had before. These gemstones are a little bit of a different shape, but I still use the same colouring technique. For the sections of the neck behind this, when I was working on the outlines I made them really smooth, so I wanted to go along with this and attempt an armoured plating effect. So I started by adding a base layer of shading with Cool Grey 3, and then over the top of that I added some smooth gradients with Cool Grey 5 and 7. Just trying to attempt to create the effect that the plates are sitting on top of each other. So you can imagine when the dragon's moving its head, the plates are sliding along, so it just allows this free movement. Then for the gemstones along each of the plates, I added the same colours as before, but I just made those colours a little bit darker, just because they're in much more of a shaded area. And then along the lower edge and the right edge of each of the plates, I used a white Prismacolor pencil just to help define that shape. Over the top of all of this, I blended some darker shading with a black Copic marker along with Cool Grey 7 and 5, just to add some extra depth and hopefully make the dragon's face and all the gemstones stand out even more as the prominent features and the focus point of the drawing. After this, I also coloured in the smaller gemstones along the dragon's back, using a mixture of ice blue, light pink and cerise, and then also added a bunch of highlights with the highlighter pen. That was the dragon completed, so then it was time to work on the background, starting with the sky and the clouds and the mountains in the far background. I just used one marker for this, that being pale heath, and just adding layers of colour, just leaving the tops of the mountains and the clouds showing amongst all that colouring. Then for the cave colouring, I used a mixture of Cool Grey 3, 5 and 7 for the stone, and then for the mossy areas I used pea green and verdigris. Then amongst all of that I added a bunch of highlighting with the highlighter pen. I used exactly the same method for the colouring of the gemstones as well, to match the dragon. And then for the final stages of this drawing, I added a bright highlight going all the way around the dragon, and added particle effects with the highlighter pen and the light pink marker. And after that, this drawing was completed. Overall, it took about 7.5 hours to complete. I think that's down to the planning and the initial sketch and the outlines mainly, but also because of the colouring of the gemstones. Each of those sections took the most amount of time. But I genuinely loved working on this one, and adding those bright colours to contrast the neutral tones of the dragon's skin was super fun to see. I'd been looking forward to attempting this for a while. So please let me know what you think of this drawing in the comments below, and if you have any suggestions for future fan art, fantasy art, tutorials, any suggestions at all are really appreciated. If you want to see more drawing and painting videos, then make sure you're subscribed, and any likes or shares on this video really mean a lot to me. If you want to follow my progress and keep updated with all of the things I work on through the week, then be sure to check out the links in the description box below to check out my Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. And once again, thank you so much for the support, and thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot, and I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you all soon.